Practical Humility, a reflection for the 22nd Sunday in Ordinary Time. This Sunday's first reading from the book of Sirach struck me as an odd collection of snippets until I opened the Bible and read between the lines. Verse 17 begins our reading and introduces the theme, "My child, conduct your affairs with humility, and you will be loved more than a giver of gifts." Gift giving places an obligation on the receiver to reciprocate, whereas humble behavior on the part of an honorable person bestows esteem on others as a free gift. Verse 18 builds on this idea. Humble yourself the more, the greater you are, and you will find favor with God. This puts the divine stamp of approval on humble behavior toward others. Verse 19, missing from our reading, expands on the previous verse. For great is the power of God, by the humble he is glorified. This last verse links humility before others to humility before God. People of faith generally agree on the latter, humility before God, as a basic spiritual value. The former, humility before others, presents more of a challenge. Starting with verse 20, the message shifts. What is too sublime for you, seek not. Into things beyond your strength, search not. What is committed to you, attend to. For what is hidden is not your concern. With what is too much for you, meddle not, when shown things beyond human understanding. At first glance, these verses seem to warn against venturing into the unknown, or expanding the boundaries of human knowledge into matters best left to God. And yet, the verses that follow put this warning in perspective. Their own opinion has misled many, and false reasoning unbalanced their judgment. Where the pupil of the eye is missing, there is no light, and where there is no knowledge, there is no wisdom. These two verses speak to the necessity of broad knowledge and sound reasoning in the search for wisdom. Personal opinions invariably reflect the biases and assumptions, as well as the knowledge or ignorance of the persons who hold them. To progress from opinion to wisdom requires work. In today's gospel, Jesus puts humility in a social context. Speaking to the table guests with a parable, he warns of the danger of placing oneself above others. Taking the highest place at the table, one runs the risk of being sent unceremoniously to the lowest. Taking the lowest in the first place, one may be asked to move up higher. To sum up, exercising humility, one gains honor in community. His final point circles back to the giver of gifts in the first reading. He advises his listeners to offer hospitality to those who cannot reciprocate. This generous act, like humble behavior, bestows esteem on others as a free gift. Jesus himself has laid out the humble path of compassion and self-sacrifice that leads to inclusion in the assembly of the firstborn enrolled in heaven, spoken of in our second reading from the letter to the Hebrews. Following in his footsteps, by the grace and power of the Holy Spirit, we need not fear to approach the living God, the judge of all. Today's gospel verse, Matthew 11:29, reminds us, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am meek and humble of heart." Reading on, we hear Jesus' words of reassurance, "And you will find rest for yourselves, for my yoke is easy and my burden light."